Aaron Walker says, what is it about the liberal thinking process that makes liberals wrong on absolutely everything? And how can conservatives correct the actual process that leads them to being wrong about everything, and hence making them start being right on everything? That's an awesome question. And Ray Kaysen has a similar kind of thing. It says, I've heard and experienced myself that liberals are much more likely to unfriend their online conservative compatriots than be unfriended themselves. What do you think of the attitude that will express opinion but not dissolate? What do you think about the attitude that will express opinion but not tolerate dissenting opinion? This strikes me as a hallmark of the difference between liberals and conservatives. Exactly right, Ray. Exactly right, Aaron. This kind of ties into Chick-fil-A, so let's develop this a little further because this is an important thing. First of all, one of the reasons why liberals are much more intolerant and much more likely to unfriend somebody is because they stick their fingers in their ears when they hear an opposing viewpoint. But we hear an opposing viewpoint every minute of every day. Conservatives in America, because the media and entertainment, show business, college, stand-up comedy, professors, schools, we hear the liberal message every single day. They don't hear us at all, which is why it's so funny when they often try to describe us. There was a report on Chick-fil-A. Some reporter said, I went down to the Chick-fil-A today, and I could not believe the homophobic, hate-filled I couldn't recognize the country. A bunch of people said, we didn't hear anything like that at the actual Chick-fil-A. Which Chick-fil-A did you go to and when were you there? And the guy walked the story back. I don't think he went at all. I think he imagined that people went to go to Chick-fil-A to say, oh, those queers, and all of this. No. People went to Chick-fil-A because they still understand that freedom of speech and freedom to believe what you want to believe is still important in this country. That's why people went to Chick-fil-A on the boycott day. I guess it was yesterday. They don't even know anything about us, and they don't want to hear anything about us, because ultimately, modern liberalism is not even a belief system. They talk about conservative extremists, ideologues. Of course I'm an ideologue. I am an ideologue because I have an ideology. My ideology is American conservatism with a good, strong sprinkling of libertarianism. Classical liberalism is what I am. I have an ideology. I think about things. And I have a belief system, and that's what you call my belief system. These people don't have a belief system. They have a system of justifying behaviors based on an emotional response to something that they feel usually guilty about. This is a very complicated topic. Let me isolate a little, like a subclass of liberals, because it's a little easier for me to deal with simply because I know them a little better. Let's talk about the Hollywood limousine liberals, the multi-millionaires who talk about having their taxes raised on them, and this kind of ties back into the filmmaking thing, I guess. When somebody like Brad Pitt, or I think Will Ferrell said it today, Will Ferrell said, I think the top tax rate should be 75%. People say, you're welcome to pay 75% if you want to, Will. You have to understand how Hollywood works and how all of this stuff works. Warren Buffett, the Warren Buffett rule, right? Buffett's a perfect example of this. When somebody says, I want to have my taxes raised, my income taxes raised, that's somebody who doesn't make a lot of money on income. Warren Buffett doesn't. I think Warren Buffett got an income of $100,000 a year, right? He's worth billions of dollars. All of his money is in capital holdings and so on. He doesn't get an income. He has his corporation pay him a token $100,000, and he pays income tax on that, which is why his secretary's salary presumably is higher than his, right, or tax rate. Likewise, when George Clooney or Matt Damon or Will Ferrell gets a $15 million payday for a movie, they don't write the check to Will Ferrell. They write the check to WF Productions. And WF Productions owns the office space and owns the cars and pays for the health care and probably leases the house and rents all the studios, and every single jet ride and everything that makes Will Ferrell's life comfortable is paid for by his production company. Then the production company pays Will Ferrell some token income, which he pays income tax on. Maybe not even in the top bracket because the company pays for everything. I do the exact same thing, by the way. I have an LLC where all of my income goes, and the LLC buys everything that is a legitimate tax deduction, including the computers that I'm talking to you on now. And that's just smart. And it's not only smart, that's how business works. It's not really my income if I have to apply it into making more income, right? I don't get to keep the money I spend on this computer and spend it for business purposes. So when they talk about raising income taxes, it's all a joke. That's why they don't just give more money. They just, it's no skin off of their nose. It's like everything else. It's the same reason why liberals want to ban jet skis, because they don't jet ski. Or they want to ban ATVs because it's out ruining the desert. They've never been in the desert in their lives. They don't want, they don't want you to have McDonald's because they don't go to McDonald's. They don't want you to they want to close airports because the noise is bothering me. Well, you moved next to an airport, ma'am. You moved in next to an airport. Yes, but we should shut the airport down because of all of the noise. Well, you're not a pilot, are you? No. So they're always trying to control things that they don't have anything to do. That's why they want to ban guns. They don't own guns. Of course they want to ban guns. No skin off of their nose for them to ban guns. They're busybodies. The fundamental difference between conservatives and busybodies is conservatives mind their own business. They have their own lives. There's some defective gene that probably comes out of some deformed proto-human ancestor that somehow took a cosmic ray in the brainstem somehow, and all of their descendants have this defective gene where they're not happy unless they're making other people do what they want them to do. They're miserable. They're miserable unless they can get other people to be miserable. And they want to control every aspect of your life. So they try to tell you what to do. They just mind your own business, damn it. That's the essence of libertarianism, right? It's really kind of the essence of conservatism. Mind your own business. You have to have a business to mind. If you don't have your own business to mind, you start minding somebody else's business. Here in Los Angeles and among the upper level of the liberal intelligentsia, and this is true for your garden variety street liberals in the Occupy Wall Street movement too, ultimately, guys, what it really comes down to with these guys is they have a very romantic view of themselves. They have a romantic view of themselves based on the fact that they don't seem to be very good at anything. If they were good at something, if they genuinely excelled at something, they'd take pride in their work. And if they took real pride in their work, they would have achieved a level of skill at whatever it is they're doing, whether it's clay pottery or brain surgery. If they were good at what they did, they would achieve a level of skill where people would want their product. Then they'd start selling their product. Then they become conservatives. So when you run into your garden variety liberal who's got his fist in the air and talking about, redistributing the wealth, or they've got a Save the Earth bumper sticker on the back of their Prius, what they're really doing is they're trying to find a way to make them special, to make themselves special. They don't do it through individual achievement the way we do. This is why I have, and I don't know how I can say this more plainly. I wish I had a chance to say this every day. I mean this from as far deep in the bottom of my heart as I have a bottom to my heart. I have infinitely more respect and admiration for a person who comes to this country who has no degree, no college degree, no high school degree, and who is a janitor and who does a good job every day. Infinitely more respect for that person, infinitely more admiration for that person. Those persons deserve to be called sir and ma'am, people who work hard for a living and do a good job. Infinitely more respect for a completely illiterate janitor than I do for a college professor with 4 degrees in medieval poetry who thinks that this country is awful and who thinks that the world owes him a gigantic living, and so therefore he's got a right to control everybody else's lives and tell other people how to live. Infinitely more respect for those people. They're honest, decent people. These intellectuals are horrible people. So your garden variety person out there who's holding a copy of War and Peace under their arm and never opened the book, and they've got glasses that don't have, prescriptions in the lenses, these kind of people, their coin of the realm is unearned moral superiority. They want to look and act better and smarter than you are. So when Will Ferrell says, I think the tax rate ought to be 75%, what he's really saying is, I'm a much better person than you greedy people out there. Yes, I make $15 million to stand in front of a camera and mug for a few hours a day and then go back to my luxury trailer. Yes, of course, I know that I could feed entire villages in Africa for the cost of one day's pay. Yes, I know that I work in an industry where I get paid in the space of a few seconds more than anybody else in the entire crew is going to get during the 6-week or 6-month length of this entire movie shoot. They know that. But by saying things like, I think we should give away 75%, I get paid too much, I make too much money, I should be taxed more, this is their way of showing you that they're swell guys and that they're decent guys and that they're moral guys and they're more morally advanced than you, but it's all a bunch of crap and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. The proof in the pudding is that Will Ferrell wants to pay 75% tax rate. He can pay that tomorrow, but he won't. If he really wants to live up to what he says, these guys like Matt Damon and George Clooney and all these guys making this posturing could simply abolish their production companies. They could have the check written to them. They could get a $10 million check for a movie and part with $7.5 million of it. They'll never do that in a million years because they're hypocrites, because they don't believe in anything. They just want to look and feel good. I'll tell you something else about most of these liberals. The reason that they have to plug their ears, and getting to Ray and Aaron's question about why they unfriend friends who are conservative, is because if it dawns on them that everybody else is doing something else, they'll change. They're victims of social proof. If all the cool kids were conservatives, they'd be conservatives. They don't know and they don't care. They just want to be cool. They want to fit in. And so this is why they can't hear another opinion, because when you talk sense to these people and you ask them to defend these things, you present them with facts and logic and history, then they start to have this cognitive dissonance. I can't start thinking about these things, because if I do, I might have to change my mind. If I change my mind, I'd change my identity and I lose all my friends. There it is. The great example of this is David Mamet, who is the best writer living today. He's certainly the best dramatic writer living today. He's a certifiable masterpiece genius. And David Mamet was a big old liberal. And Mamet, over time, because he's such a talented artist, he has to examine life. He has to, if he's going to be good at what he does, he has to look at what people say, why they say it, how they sound, what are they saying, and reproduce that with a message behind it. And over the course of time, a guy like Mamet became aware of the fact that everything he believed was wrong. And Mamet had the intellectual and moral courage to admit that he was wrong, and he changed his mind. But the salient point about Mamet is, when Mamet wrote that article in the Village Voice saying why he wasn't a liberal anymore and why he'd become a conservative, and listed all the reasons why, Mamet may not have known, I suspect he probably didn't fully realize, that he was saying goodbye to all of his friends. 95%, 99% of his friends weren't going to talk to him anymore. Because if Mamet turned, then maybe they would turn. And what happens if they turn? They lose their entire identity. Think about this, folks. Think about if everything you believe is wrong. There's a lot emotional at stake there, isn't it, really? It's probably as good a place for me as any to talk about this, because it's a source of ongoing shame for me. I named my blog Eject, Eject, Eject because I had ejected from my previous worldview. I was a lot more liberal than I am now. But when I say something like I was a lot more liberal, or Bill used to be a liberal, I'll see that every now and then. Can't really argue with that, but it makes me kind of cringe, because the fact of the matter is, when I was at my most liberal in college, I was always pro-American, loved this country, loved it, thought it was the greatest place in the world, number one country in the world, best at everything, loved this country, loved the military, wanted to fly for the Air Force, loved business. When I went to make those movies, I didn't go for a grant or say, give me some money so I can practice my art. I tried to make it a business deal, tried to take some money, and I had a plan to sell a product and return more money than I took in. So I was a lot more liberal than I am now, but I was pro-business, I was pro-capitalism, I was pro-America, I was pro-military. Liberals today aren't these things, so I wasn't a modern liberal in any sense of the word. I will tell you this, though. When I was a lot more liberal than I am today, I passionately believed in things I knew nothing about. I thought Ronald Reagan was a dangerous old man because everybody else told me he was a dangerous old man. I hadn't read anything Reagan said, hadn't listened to any of the arguments. I just went along. And there's something nice about going along only in this sense. I'm not saying it's not good to be self-aware. What I am saying is that America works best when there aren't so much politics in business. I was 17, 18 years old before I found out whether or not my dad was a Republican or a Democrat. Turns out he was a Republican. Let's see. Yeah, that's my dad on screen left, and you probably recognize that other guy. But I didn't know, and I'm very happy that I didn't know. I'm very happy that I got to spend my childhood riding a bike and playing baseball, and not being taken to protests by people who really should involve children in their own politics. So how do you change their mind? I don't know. Look, I'm trying to change their mind the only way I know how, and that's by doing these videos. Things just got a little blue. Hang on a second, through the magic of remote control. Yeah, a little better. Yeah, there we go. So we do what we can. And I know many of you have been so kind to me by forwarding these videos and supporting me in Declaration Entertainment and PJTV and all that other stuff. All we can do is all we can do. Right? We just do the best we can. And certainly if there was ever a time for patriots to step up, this is the time. But I do find, and I'll just repeat this, I know I've said this before, and then we'll move on to the next question. I got a chance to spend some time with Tammy Bruce, who I'd never met before. We did an event in Arizona. And Tammy says she'll go to a college and she'll talk to kids who've been liberals their entire lives, raised by liberals, liberal high schools, liberal colleges. She'll talk to them for 15, 20 minutes and they flip. They become conservatives. And she said is not because of my incredible persuasive power, Bill. It's because their arguments are so thin. They've never had to defend them, and when they run into somebody who does know how to defend their arguments, they flip. They become conservatives. Of course they do. That's why they can't listen. That's why they have to plug their ears and unfriend conservative friends, because they don't want that sense of, oh my God, everything I believe is wrong. I'm going to have to eject from my worldview. But it really is a very astonishing thing, and I know I've said this before too, but I live in mortal fear of going out there one day and doing combat for the team and running into some liberal champion and just chews me up and spits me out and makes me look like an idiot, makes me feel bad and let the team down. But every day that goes by, I begin to realize not only is that not likely to happen, I just don't think it's out there. I don't think that argument exists. Forget about the champion. I don't think they have the argument. I think we take them to pieces. I think we've always taken them to pieces, and I think that's why they have to be living in a world that's based on emotion, because facts are not part of the case. So when you start hearing things about, well, why are conservatives so mean, and why do they hate the poor? It's like, you just have to sit down and explain to them why, 50, 60 years of entitlement programs and war on poverty have created the most angry, uneducated, mean-spirited underclass in certainly the history of Western civilization. Have things gotten better with the trillions of dollars we've spent on social welfare programs? No. Just as an example, black marriage rates, I believe, used to be higher than white marriage rates. Certainly their out-of-wedlock situation was infinitely better. Their graduation was infinitely better. All of this stuff is just getting worse and worse and worse. And that's really what it is about being conservative, right? I've made this argument before. I'm not going to make it now. I'm holding on to this because I think this is a book. But basically, if you're in favor of individual freedom and maximizing human happiness, at the beginning of the curve, you're a liberal. You want to change things until things improve. And then when things reach maximum optimal happiness, when life gets as good as it gets, and continued change starts to make things worse instead of better, then all of a sudden you become a conservative, right? You want to improve things and change things as they get better and better and better, and then when continued change starts to make things worse, you stop being a liberal, you start being a conservative. Whoa. Liberals are not like that. Progressives are people who think that change is always better, future is always better. They're wrong. Just no question about it. I could do a whole lot of time on that one, but I'm going to move on because I want to cover more questions during these things about